Hi everybody, Paul here again. When you go to start your vehicle, if the engine turns over but not fast enough to start, or you get a clicking sound or no sound at all, then you more than likely have a bad battery. However, you may also have a bad alternator which caused the bad battery. So how do you know which one is bad? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about in this video, which is really easy to do, so stay tuned. Let's first talk about what exactly the battery and the alternator do. The primary purpose of the battery is to provide electrical DC power to start the vehicle. The way it does this is by providing electrical energy to the starter to turn the engine over. The secondary purpose of the battery is to provide power for short-term use when the engine is not running for things like headlights, windshield wipers, power windows, heated seats, radio, GPS, or any other electrical accessories. The primary purpose of the alternator is to provide electrical DC power to all electrical components when the engine is running. The way it does this is by the engine turning a drive belt. When the drive belt turns, it turns the alternator, which creates electrical energy to power all of the electrical components. The alternator also charges the battery when the engine is running. Before performing these tests that I'm about to show you, be sure to inspect the battery cable connections to make sure they're corrosion-free and tight. Many electrical problems are due to poor battery connections. If they have any corrosion, remove the battery cable and clean it with a mixture of baking soda and water or some other type of battery cleaner. Once the corrosion has been removed, be sure to inspect the battery cable for any corrosion damage and make any necessary repairs. Also be sure that the electrical connections on the alternator are corrosion-free and tight, and that the belt turning the alternator is tight. So here's how to easily tell if you have a bad battery or a bad alternator. The next two tests that I'm about to show you is something that anybody can do because it does not require any special diagnostic equipment. The first test is to jump start the vehicle with a set of jumper cables. If you're not sure how to jump start a vehicle, then watch the next video at the end of this video, which will show you how to do that. Once the vehicle is started, turn on the headlights, radio, rear defroster, GPS, heated seats, or any other electrical accessories and let the vehicle sit and idle for 2 hours. If within that 2 hours the vehicle eventually stops running, then more than likely the alternator is bad. The second and last test is after jump starting the vehicle. If it continues to run for 2 hours and never stops, but later on the vehicle fails to start on its own, then more than likely the battery is bad. Next, I'm going to show you a much faster test that can be performed by using a digital multimeter like you see here. You can purchase a digital multimeter at any auto parts store, big box store, Amazon or eBay, and they're not that expensive. First, turn the digital multimeter to 20 DC volts. This setting will give you the most accurate reading. With the vehicle running, take the 2 probes from the digital multimeter and touch one probe to the negative battery terminal and touch the other probe to the positive battery terminal. It does not matter which color probe is on which terminal. Not only can an alternator undercharge, but it can also overcharge. At idle, a good alternator will produce 13.5 to 14.5 volts with no lights or accessories on. At idle, if it's less than 13 volts or over 15.5 volts, then the alternator is bad and needs to be replaced. It is normal for the voltage to increase as the speed of the engine increases. As you can see, this alternator is good. Something else that you need to be aware of about the alternator on a vehicle is alternators contain diodes. Most automotive alternators will contain 6 diodes. These diodes convert AC current into DC current, which is what the electrical system uses. These diodes act as a one-way door, which only allows the electricity to flow in one direction, which is from the alternator to the battery. However, something that a lot of people are unaware of is an alternator can have failing diodes, but yet the alternator will still show that it's putting out the proper voltage. In fact, if just one diode starts to fail, this will cause electricity to flow from the battery to the alternator when the vehicle is turned off. This means if the vehicle sits for a few days or even overnight, this can cause the battery to go completely dead and then the vehicle will not start. Most alternator diodes on a vehicle should read between 400 to 800 millivolts. If it reads over 800 millivolts, then one or more of the diodes is starting to fail, which means you either need to replace the failing diodes or replace the entire alternator. Most people will usually just replace the entire alternator. So here's how to easily perform an alternator diode test. Take a digital multimeter and set it to the continuity setting, which will have an arrow, a plus, and a volume symbol. This is also the same setting for testing diodes. Next, disconnect the negative battery cable. Once it's disconnected, be sure to isolate it and keep it from touching the negative battery connection. Next, place the black probe on the positive battery terminal. You must use the black probe or you will not get a reading. Next, place the red probe on the outer metal casing of the alternator. You must use the red probe or you will not get a reading. If at first you do not get a reading, then scratch the red probe across the surface of the alternator until you get a reading. As you can see, this particular alternator has a reading of 445 millivolts, so the diodes are good. The alternator diodes can also be checked by removing the electrical connections located on the alternator, or if the alternator is already removed from the vehicle. To remove the electrical connections, remove the main electrical harness and remove the positive cable from the positive connection. Once the positive cable is removed, do not allow the positive cable to touch any ground or you'll get a shower of sparks. Again, with the digital multimeter on the continuity setting, place the black probe on the positive connection and place the red probe on the outer metal casing. As you can see, this particular alternator has a reading of 475 millivolts, so the diodes are good. I hope you found this helpful, and if you like this video, please hit the like button below, share it with your friends, and please be sure to subscribe. God bless you and have a great day. Bye for now. And while you guys are fixing your vehicle, Sparky and I will be recycling ourselves.